Hello, everyone. Lots of folks joining. Please feel free to keep your video off and audio off. Will be primarily listening during this webinar, and we'll have ways for you to plug in questions. So if you're not feeling camera ready, absolutely no worries. And we will give folks a couple more minutes to join, and then we'll get started. All right, we've got a lot of folks here. I will continue to admit people as they trickle in, but I think we'll go ahead and get started. I do want to let you know a couple of housekeeping things. We do have the Q&A enabled for this. You should see it at the bottom of your screen. I'm on a laptop, so I can see it at the bottom of my Zoom screen. I see Q&A. Feel free to use the Q&A to drop questions throughout. As we talk through different programs, we will have a dedicated time to answer all of those questions at the end. And if you can't find the Q&A for some reason, you can also, of course, throw those into the chat. This webinar is being recorded, so it will be available for you to either share with folks that you know who weren't able to be here, or to reference later as well. And we will also point you to some different resources that exist that will answer or hold the answers to lots of questions that we're going to talk about today for your future reference. So for those who don't know me, I'm Elizabeth Kawine. I'm the founder and executive director of Music Export Memphis. Also on the call today is Morgan Massey, who is our program coordinator. Lots of you may have worked with Morgan in the past. She's your first point of contact for any grant application, any submission that you're working on for an opportunity through Music Export Memphis. You will likely talk to and hear from Morgan, and she's also available to help you put together successful grant applications. So definitely a person that you need to know. So we are looking forward to diving in and answering your questions. This workshop is one that we've done a couple of times now, and really is designed to, for those of you who have gotten grants from Music Export Memphis in the past, it's a refresher on maybe some things that might have changed, updates to some of our processes. And if you haven't gotten a grant from us in the past, we are also going to kind of go through the 101, the basics of what you need to know in order to get funding through our many different programs. So we're going to start. I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to start with the very beginning of the process. So hopefully folks can see my screen. I'm just on the Music Export Memphis website. Morgan, can you give me a thumbs up if we are awesome? Okay, so once you head to our website, you're going to go to this section for artists and submit for opportunities. And it's going to take you to Submittable. Submittable is a platform that we started using in June of this past year. So if you've gotten grants from us in the past, but maybe not in the very recent past, this might be brand new to you. But every opportunity or grant that you apply for now for Music Export Memphis, you will do through the Submittable platform. So they'll all exist right here. But like I just showed you, it's truly just on our website. You'll come here to the artist section and click Submit for Opportunities, and it'll take you right here. This page is going to always be home to every opportunity that we have available right now. And so these things that you see in front of you are always available. And we'll talk more about these always available grants a little bit later. Our Ambassador Tour Grant, the Merch Fund, and our Industry Scholarship. So these are always going to appear here. But at certain times of year, you'll also see applications for different showcases that we might be doing. Folk Alliance, Americana Fest, NOLA Musicon, North by Northeast, whatever it might be. During set application periods, those will also appear here. The important thing that you need to know is that when you start an application, which we're going to dive deep into a couple of these, you will need to set up a submittable profile. So once you have a login for submittable, you will use that same login to apply for any Music Export Memphis opportunities in the future. And you will be able to do some things through that login that you maybe hadn't been able to do in the past. Again, if you had applied for grants from us before we started using submittable, you can actually see the status of your grant. Once you log in, you'll be able to see where you are in the review cycle. So if we have reviewed your application, if we have moved it through to the next phases of funding, if we've approved it, you'll be able to see all of that in the submittable platform. And so it's really great place to just go log in and you can check on that before you reach out to us to check on the status of your application. You actually have access to it right there. So definitely take advantage of that, the ability to keep an eye on your grant as it goes through the process within submittable. Something else to know about your submittable profile is that you need to create the profile as the band or artist who is applying for the opportunity. So the difference there is if you are a manager or a team member and you are filling out an application for a grant on behalf of an artist that you work with, do not, for example, fill out the demographic information on submittable as in our artist profile as yourself. You're going to want to fill it out for the applicant because that is the information that we need to know. So please keep that in mind when you're setting up your submittable application and when you're completing your artist profile. The artist profile is a necessary step that you'll have to take if you've never applied for a grant from us since we started using submittable. So if you've applied for anything from us beginning in June of last year, you will have very likely, almost certainly have taken this step of setting up your artist profile. If you haven't, the first thing that you're going to receive from us after you apply is an email asking you to complete this artist profile. And this is going to be that basic demographic information and some other career basics that allow us to track you a little bit better as you hopefully work with Music Export Memphis over time. So going back to our hub here, as I said, you'll see these always on grants here that are available all the time. So these grants are reviewed on the 15th of every month. You'll want to submit well in advance of, for example, your first tour date to ensure that you receive funds in time. And something to keep in mind is that eligible tour dates are going to start after the first of the following month. So what that means is if you are applying in this upcoming month, so you're applying for our February 15th deadline, you want to make sure that your tour dates start no sooner than March 1st. We will consider eligible tour dates those that start from the first of the following month. If there's any confusion on that, please throw a question in the chat. But really, the bottom line is make sure that you apply well in advance so that we can ensure that we can count all of your dates towards your eligibility and also that we can get you funds in time. As I mentioned earlier, opportunities like showcases for Folk Alliance or Americana Fest have set application windows. Those are publicized through Music Export Memphis's social channels and in our artist opportunity email newsletter. That is the absolute best way to get information about what's available through Music Export at any given time. It goes out on or around the first of every month. You can go to musicexportmemphis.org and go to the contact page to sign up for that. We will also be adding you to that list if you're not already on it by virtue of signing up for this webinar. So you will start receiving that email if you don't already. And that's always going to include information about every grant or opportunity that we have open. Absolute best way to stay up to date. Some of you may be aware that in 2024, what you would have also seen on this list of always open is a publicity and marketing grant. That fund is currently closed because we exhausted the funds for the pilot, but we do plan and expect to reopen that in 2025 at some point for applicants. So please just, keep an eye out. We will announce it. We will be very loud about it and make sure that once that is available to you again. Just going to check and make sure no one else is here that I need to let into this meeting. All right, so we're going to dive deep into the grant review process now. And we're going to start with our tour grants. So once you go to the tour grant page, you will see a snapshot of your eligibility information, and all of the program requirements are going to be at the top here. So it's going to give you information about, again, what's something I just mentioned, right? Submitting for your funds well in advance of your tour dates. Applications are reviewed on the 15th. But it's also going to give you some specific info that's really helpful in terms of how we make funding decisions. And I'm going to go into some of these that we think are particularly important reminders here in a second. But something that I want to stress overall that is definitely new-ish for 2025 is that we are experiencing, of course, a higher and higher volume of grant applications every single year. We have more and more artists who are coming to us for tour funds, who are coming to us for our merch fund. It's an awesome problem to have, and it means that y'all are on the road. It also means that more artists are aware of our work, but it also means that these grants are more competitive than ever. So it's important for me to stress that no one applying for a grant through Music Export Memphis is guaranteed funding. This year, for our ambassador grants, we have an established cap that we're going to be monitoring, a total that we can't go above per quarter. So what that means for you functionally is that you might see a slightly lower grant amount than you would have in the past, because our goal ultimately is to continue to fund all eligible artists, especially for tour grants. And what that means is that your grant might be slightly lower so that we can give grants to more applicants and make our funds go further. So where you may have submitted for a grant for a tour in the past, that you might have gotten $1,000 for that tour, and maybe this time around you get $750. We want to continue to fund you, but you may see that those amounts are slightly less, because we are trying to make sure that we can spread that out and support as many artists as possible. One thing that you can do to help yourself along in this, though, is submit the best application possible. So that is what we're going to kind of talk about for a moment here as we look at this application. So some of this information, of course, super basic: your name, your band, your contact information. Here's where you're going to list out your confirmed tour dates. We have communicated this for, since this program launched in 2018 as a minimum of 5 dates. But what we want to provide some clarity on now is that in general, that actually means 5 unique cities. Several years ago, we set a sort of clear boundary around not funding residencies. So if you have the opportunity to go to another city and perform several nights in a row at a single venue, that would not count as a tour. But we now have gotten a little bit more defined on that, and we are looking for you to be traveling to 5 unique places. There are obviously nuances to this and different ways that we consider it when looking at an individual application. For example, we have certainly had artists that are playing New York City who may be playing 2 dates that are technically in New York City, but they're very far away from each other and reaching very different audiences. And we would most likely still count those as 2 different dates. But in general, you will be presenting a stronger application that's less likely to get flagged or have follow-up questions if you are showing us at least 5 unique cities in your tour. So that's definitely something that you'll want to keep in mind as you put that application together. The other thing I will tell you is that information and lots of other helpful tips are located in our frequently asked questions, our FAQs, on the Music Export Memphis website. And Morgan, if I could get you to drop the link to the FAQs in the chat so that everyone has that. That's a really great place to go before you start an application, just to familiarize yourself with really, I mean, truly the frequently asked questions, right? These are some of the things that we've encountered with artists a lot when putting together their applications, questions that you may have. And so we have taken the time to kind of flesh those out on that FAQ page. Definitely spend some time there. It will be really helpful as you start your application. Um, one other thing I'd like to note here on your tour dates is that it does say confirmed tour dates. So while we certainly appreciate when you, and I mean that, when you include where you might have a TBD, just know that we can't count that towards your minimum cities required until that is a confirmed date, confirmed venue, confirmed city, then we're able to count that. This next question I also want to flag is really, really important. How many musicians will be on this tour with you in your band? This is not just for information. This number helps us determine how much money we are going to grant to you for a given tour. So we want to know, are you solo? Are you traveling with a 3 or a 4 piece? We have a rubric that we use to decide grant amounts. And this is a key figure that goes into that calculation because we want to provide more funds to bands that are larger. So just keep in mind that this is a number that we're using to calculate that grant amount. This is also important because one of the questions that we hear a lot from folks is about funding for individual members of bands, right? So like, can everyone in my band submit for a tour grant? And the answer to that is no. That's where we want this information. We want one person in your band to submit, and we want to know how many people is this grant funding. The exception to that is if folks in your band are touring as billed artists on your tour. So if you are going out and you're performing with, a 3 piece, and let's say your guitar player is opening for you with their solo project and is a billed artist. So that means when we look at that flyer, when we go to that venue website, we're also going to see their name, and they're also going to promote that tour as a tour that they're going on with their own original music. Absolutely, that person can also separately apply for funding and would be included as a member of your band. So that's an important point of clarification there. So the next things that you'll see on here are links to your promotion, supporting links from your venues, your promotional flyer. All of this is to really just help provide some evidence that this tour is real, it's booked, it's happening at these venues that you've indicated, and you're promoting it as you've said you're going to, and we're able to see that evidence. So our team does due diligence on every application that we receive. And so what that looks like for us is that we're clicking these links, right? We're going to go and check out whatever you put in here. If it's your website, your social media posts. We want to see that venues have your show information. We want to basically be able to externally verify this tour that you're submitting for. And, I think that something that's important for me to say here is that we really try to center trust in our process. And so for us, what that often looks like is keeping these applications shorter and not asking you for, to jump through kind of needless hoops. So it's not that we don't trust you. It's that, again, with competitive funds, we've got to know that we're funding this tour that really is as you say it is. So this is, this doesn't have to be something that keeps you from applying. If any of these questions you're thinking, I don't know how I would get this, or I'm concerned about this particular, having a link that really shows this, please reach out to Morgan, because there are likely other things that you can share with us from your booking process that will accomplish the same thing. So don't let this part scare you, but we are, again, looking for that kind of third-party validation that, like, when we go out into the world and look, yeah, you're taking this tour that you've said you're taking, that we want to fund you for. So that's really what's happening kind of at the bottom of this piece. And we'll go into the next steps of the process here in a second, but I also want to walk through a couple of things on our merch fund application. So again, same pieces at the top. And for those who are less familiar with the merch fund, I'll stop here for a second and of course invite you to go to the website and read a bit more about this. But the merch fund provides grants for artists who are creating merchandise with a Memphis-based provider. And so those grants are not designed to cover 100% of your costs, and they are paid directly to your service provider on your behalf. That's actually designed to help you, by the way. It means that that money never hits your bank account as income. It goes straight from us to your, your graphic designer or your t-shirt printer or whatever it might be. And so you're able to drastically reduce the cost of your merchandise, and hopefully that impacts your bottom line. So a few things to note about this, and this is where I want to come back to the earlier point of putting together the strongest application possible and how competitive these grants are coming into 2025. When you see these questions for describing the merchandise item that you wish to fund and sharing a bit about your request, these questions are important, and we need you to spend time on them, or rather, you should spend time on them if you would like to get your merch fund, grant request funded. We really want to understand what are you getting? How does it connect to your brand? What's the potential return on investment? This one's really, really important. We want to fund you and subsidize your career, but we want to help you do it in a smart, strategic, and thoughtful way. So we want to hear from you. I'm pressing vinyl because I know that this is what my audience wants. And I know because, I've had these conversations with my fans. It shows this is something that artists in my peer group are doing. And the potential return on investment is this. I'm going to spend this much per piece, and this is how much I'm going to get back. It's important for us to see that you're thinking about those things, but also in many cases, we may take some of that information and use it to help build a case to continue funding this program with the folks who give us grants and donate to Music Export Memphis. We can share some of this information that you're sharing with us with them in order to continue to have these programs be funded and be able to give you these grants into the future. So the last thing I'll point out here is that we do have something called a preferred partner program. So that these are organizations, or these are businesses who donate directly to Music Export Memphis. They provide funding to us and support what we do. And so we want to support them. So if you are using Memphis Record Pressing or Bluff City Sports, and I believe we have at least one more that's going to be coming online in the first quarter, if you are using any of these, you will be eligible to get more money for your project, because we want to reward folks for using these businesses who are so good to Music Export Memphis and really support our work. So that's what that's about. There's absolutely nothing about not using a preferred partner that will impact your application negatively. Zero. It's just if you are using a preferred partner, we will be able to hopefully bump that grant amount up just a little bit. So I'm going to pause here and just take another moment to remind you that you can drop questions into the Q&A. That we'll be taking a look at those. You can also drop questions into the chat. So please take advantage of that, and we will be getting to those in just a minute. I am going to now take you through, once you get a grant, what is going to happen. So what we started with was, before you apply for a grant, you're going to come to the Music Export Memphis website. You're going to click on Submit for a Grant. You're going to be taken to this page, and you're going to be prompted to create a submittable account if you haven't already. You will be asked to create an artist profile if you haven't already. And then you'll start your grant application process. And you will only have to do those things once. Once you've done them, in the future, you'll come back to apply for grants. You won't have to do those things again. Then once you're applying for a grant, the thing to keep in mind is that our grants are competitive, and applying for a grant and meeting the basic requirements does not guarantee funding. So we really want to hear from you, for example, on that merch fund grant, of how you're going to use the merchandise, how it's going to make a difference for you, how it connects to your brand, how well you know your market and your audience. On the ambassador tour grants, we want to be able to see the due diligence on that and verify that your tour is happening. And just another reminder that Morgan has dropped that link to the FAQs in the chat. So please do take a look at that and use that to your advantage. And if we hear enough questions from you, we'll add those things to the FAQ. So it's a growing, it is an evolving piece based on what we hear from you. So please definitely take a look at that. So once you receive a grant, and this is a good moment to also stress that our entire process for granting goes through submittable. So you will be able to you will need to fill out follow-up forms through submittable. You will fill out your payment form through submittable that gets us payment information to give you a grant. So All of these things are going to come through your Submittable account. You'll receive direct emails from Submittable, but again, you can also log in and see where your grant is in moving through the process. So with our tour grants, once you get that grant, we are going to fund 90% of that grant once it's awarded. We make our payments on the final date of each month. So that's going to be on or around the 30th. You must submit your payment information in advance of that date. If you don't, we may hold your grant payment until the following month. So please just be on the lookout for those emails from Submittable requesting your payment information so that we can get that payment processed out to you on time. So again, with the tour grant, that'll be 90% of your grant. For the merch fund, that payment will go directly to your service provider. But it will still be on or around the 30th of that month. For tour grants, you also owe us a follow-up report. For those of you who have received grants from us in the past for touring, we will be making some changes to that follow-up report in the certainly by the end of the first quarter. I think within the next couple of months, it will look a little bit different. But nonetheless, that form is still through Submittable, will remain through Submittable, and you have 30 days after the close of your tour to complete that form. I want to stress that we will not follow up with you or hound you for that report. We are tracking, of course, the stated final date of your tour, so we know when we should expect to hear from you, but all of those forms are available to you through the platform at the time that you receive the grant. So if you do not submit your final report until more than 30 days after the close of your tour, you do forfeit your final 10%. So that's the key. If you've gotten a $1,000 grant, we will have paid out $900 to you. We want to give you that final $100, but we need you to come on Submittable and submit that final report, which should not take you more than 10 minutes to get that last $100. If you fail to submit a follow-up report, we may still ask you to submit that report if you apply again later and have not completed that step for a previous tour, so that you can be considered what we would call in good standing. You would still have forfeited your final 10%. So that happens after 30 days after the close of your tour. Happy to answer any questions about that to provide clarity. So I think the key things there are, we're going to reach out to you once you're awarded a grant for your payment information, and we need you to respond quickly so that we can pay you on time, which for us is on or around the 30th. And we pay our grants we do one grant payment cycle each month. So if you don't get your payment information in on time, we may hold your grant until the next month. And again, Submittable is your friend on follow-up reporting. So that, I think, the other things that you're going to get through Submittable once you get a grant, you'll receive, of course, an artist agreement if you are going on a tour. That agreement is going to outline some expectations of you for what we'd like to see from you on social media, / what we are requiring of you on social media during the time of your tour. And you will sign and return that agreement and turn in your bank information as well, so that we can pay you via direct deposit for the first 90% of your tour. And of course, with the merch fund, you'll be submitting invoicing or payment details for your provider for those grants. So I'm going to stop my sharing there. And I see we have no questions, so I must have done an amazing job of explaining everything. But let's just take a moment now and open it up briefly. And I will let you know that in the last sort of at least 15 minutes, we're going to shift and talk in depth about our Ambassador Access Program. And that may be why some of you all are here. And if you are, just know we're going to have a brief moment for questions and answers about what I've talked about so far. And then we'll shift into talking about Ambassador Access, which is a program that opens for applications on Wednesday of this week. So for now, let's look at questions just about sort of the first portion. Okay. Great question. Are there any unique or particularly successful past merch grants you can talk about? So yeah, I would say really and truly, it's not to be mysterious and you don't have to be fancy. We really just want to see you talk about how you understand your fans and what they're looking for, how you're thinking creatively about your brand and what you could serve to them, and what that's going to look like for you from a profit perspective. You know, we want to know that you're thinking about, okay, these t-shirts are going to cost me $9.50 a unit. I'm going to sell them for 20. Here's how many I have. I'd love to see you talk about, I know because I've got 10 shows coming up and I usually do pretty well at my merch table with this type of show. We're really just looking for you to share something in that application that indicates to us that you are thinking strategically, that you're being thoughtful about your audience, your fan base, what you're producing for them, and that you have a sense of what that profit looks like, what your return on investment really could be. So it's really just, we've seen lots of unique merch come through that has been really cool, and that's probably another like webinar for another day. Really, really cool different ideas, but it's less about that for us. It's less about what you're creating, and it's so much more about just how you're thinking strategically about the business side of what you're doing and how you're going to move that product. Okay. No other questions right now. Okay. We were obviously doing a great job of explaining absolutely everything. I'll just take a moment to kind of just hit some high points, and then we will and anybody else that has questions, you can throw those into the chat. And I'll also mention that, I said that that there are certain opportunities that open during shorter windows of time. So Ambassador Access is one of those, which we're going to talk about in a second. Those applications open on Wednesday. The next showcase application that we will have will likely be for Americana Fest, and that typically opens on June 1st. It will always be open in June, but typically it opens on June 1st. So that's something else that you can be on the lookout for. And again, the best way to keep up with that is paying attention to our Artist Opportunity email newsletter that comes out around the 1st of every month. We'll always plug things on socials. And then when you go to that submit page on our website, you're going to see that pop up. The other thing that is kind of an always on that I didn't talk about in the kind of in-depth looking at the applications is our Ambassador Industry Scholarship. The Ambassador Industry Scholarship is available to anyone who wants to attend an industry, professional development, some type of professional education event outside of Memphis. And it does not require that you be showcasing or performing. So it's also a grant that's available to industry professionals. So if you want to go to a conference, even if it's a conference that Music Expert Memphis is showcasing at, but if you want to go to attend, to learn, to grow and network, maybe the business side of things, you can submit for an industry scholarship from us. And that is also one where we really want to hear from you on what is this opportunity? Why do you want to go? How do you think you will, gain from it, learn, and how do you think that will impact your business? And the way that works is if awarded, we will buy a conference badge or pass, whatever they call it, directly on your behalf. So we will go to the conference, we will buy the badge for you, and then you will have access to be able to attend. So that's the industry scholarship. And again, that one is also always on. But an important one to keep in mind, because with our review cycle on the 15th, you really do want to plan ahead on that one. One of the requirements is that we want you to apply in order for us to be able to purchase the badge at the lowest possible cost. So again, it's all back to how do we stretch these funds for the most people? So South by Southwest is a perfect example of this, though many conferences do it. When they initially release their badges or their conference ticketing, there will be an early bird rate, which is the lowest rate possible, and that will be available for a certain amount of time, and then the rates will start to increase. So we require that you apply in the window that will allow us to buy the badge for you at the lowest possible rate. So really and truly thinking ahead about what you want to do later this year and making sure that you're aware of those application windows so you can get your submission in time. So I have gotten another question, which is, will Music Expert Memphis be going to South by Southwest and North by Northeast this year? We will not be doing South by Southwest or North by Northeast in 2025. And while other showcase opportunities may pop up, the two that we currently are for sure going to be doing are Folk Alliance and Americana Fest. We may go back to NOLA Musicon, which we went to in October of this past year. The reason that we're not going back to South by, or North by Northeast have to do with our artist outcomes. So everything that we do, we really look at what are the results for the artists that we're bringing, and can we point to career advancing results that meet the goals that the artist had when they went to the showcase. And after 2 years at North by Northeast, we feel it's a great experience, but not the right Canadian showcase opportunity for our artists to really advance their careers in Canada. And South by Southwest, we're just not seeing the results there either. So we're currently looking for, what those other opportunities might be. We've also gone to A3C in the past. We've done that 2 years, not consecutively, but 2 years in our history, which is a hip hop conference and festival in Atlanta. We may look at doing that again. So there are other things that are on the table, and we're always happy to hear from artists about particular events, festivals, conferences that you're really interested in, that you think should be on our radar. Please send those our way. We'd love to check them out. But that's the current plan for 2025. All right, I don't see other questions. So I'm going to shift and talk more about ambassador access. And you are more than welcome to plug in general grants questions still to the Q&A, and we will answer those in addition to these specifically around ambassador access. So what is ambassador access? So this program started in 2021. I think, yes, okay. This program started in 2021. And it is designed in the shortest version possible is to over-resource artists who traditionally have been under-resourced to help them grow into touring artists. So in 2020, in 2019, as we looked at the funds that we were distributing through our tour grant program specifically, we saw that the vast majority of those funds were going to white male artists. And we recognized that a lot of this was because this is a responsive grant. And so for us, what that means is we're not going out and handpicking you to receive this. You're coming to us and saying, I have these tour dates and I'd like to receive some funding to support them. And most of the artists who are resourced enough, either financially or simply through networks and knowledge, to be able to tour were white men. And so we felt that we needed to do something to correct for that. And that is where Ambassador Access came from. So this program is essentially about a year-long cohort of artists. In the first year that we did it, there were 5. In the subsequent years, there have been 3 artists selected each year. So it's a very small cohort intentionally. And these artists receive one-on-one and intensive support over the course of a year with the goal of building toward your own solo tour. So who is eligible to apply for this? Any artist who has not toured is eligible to apply for this. But please keep in mind that we are going to be looking for and prioritizing artists of color, women, queer artists, anyone who falls into a marginalized group is going to be our priority for ambassador access. So we are looking for artists who are professionally ready in other ways to tour, but have not been able to take that lead. So what does that mean? That means that you have music that you've released commercially, whether that's on streaming platforms or you've released physical music. It means that you have a live show that is pretty tight, that you have gotten those reps in locally, that you've built an audience locally who enjoys coming to see you live. And so those 2 pieces are there. You have sort of music out that people can consume. You have a live show that's ready to go on the road. And importantly, you have at least a sense of your goals in the coming year of what you'd like to do with your music. So whether that's merch that you'd like to put out, a new album you'd like to release, whatever ways you are looking to grow. Again, for us, it's about seeing that you have a vision and a strategic plan to some degree, right? That you are thinking strategically about where you want your career to go in the year ahead and how Ambassador Access can be a part of that and support it. Applications are open starting Wednesday, as I said, which is January 15th, and they close on February 14th. So this application window is 1 month. Finalists after the written application portion will be asked to do an interview either in person or via Zoom, and selected artists will be notified by March 1st. The program activity begins in March at some point. We haven't set that date yet, with a cohort as small as the one we select, we will probably wait and do that in direct coordination with those artists to ensure that scheduling works. However, one of the big requirements when you are applying to think about is that we need to know that you can commit to participate in this program over the next year. What does participation look like? We will have group sessions once per month, certainly March through probably September or October. These group sessions will cover everything from personal finances, managing your business, taxes, to shaping your show for a tour audience, to marketing, media training, PR, advancing shows, really every topic that we can get into to help build a foundation for a strong career, touring or otherwise, we will cover. You'll also have one-on-one sessions with different professionals and members of the Music Export Memphis team starting in March, where we'll work on building out your plan, your proposal for how you'd like to use the grant funding that is also a part of Ambassador Access. So all of our Ambassador Access artists are eligible to receive a grant at the close of the program, and that is awarded based on a proposal that you create, which for most of our artists is about their tour, right? Their solo tour that they want to take. But often it incorporates other things too, EPs they want to record, merchandise they want to produce, and your grant funding can be used towards all of that. So you have to be able to commit to be engaged in the program and engaged with your cohort over the course of the year. And the other requirement is that you must be able to tour in late July. Music Export Memphis has an existing relationship with an anchor date in Northwest Arkansas that we use to build a small tour for our Ambassador Access artists. And so that is availability that we need to know that you have going into the application, that you would be able to tour over probably a week in late July. Putting together a strong application for Ambassador Access really looks similar to everything that I've talked about for other programs up to this point. We want to know from you that you have a sense of where you'd like to go with your music and that you have ideas or aspirations for how a program like this could be impactful or pivotal in helping you get to that point. So understanding that you're going to receive all of these trainings, this one-on-one support, which may even include asset creation. So photo shoots, video, other marketing materials and assets that you can use on your platforms. How will you make the most of that? And what will that really mean for you as you look to move your career forward and you look to grow as a touring artist? That's what we want to hear from you. I think that I would also love to hear what the challenges for you have been to touring up to this point. So, again, we want to know that there is a level of professional readiness to tour. And so I'd love to hear from you what the roadblocks have really been for you, or if it's just that you kind of are just now getting to this point and realizing that you're ready and you would like the support to be able to do it in a smart and effective way. So that's Ambassador Access in a nutshell. The program is really designed to be quite custom to the artists who end up getting selected for the cohort. But broadly speaking, the idea is that we are setting you up for success and giving you access to resources and ultimately funding that will help you become a sustainably touring artist. So again, those applications open on January 15th. They close on February 14th. If you have questions as you fill out that application, I really encourage you to reach out to Morgan. And Morgan is morgan@musicexportmemphis.org. And she can, Morgan, if you'll drop that email address in the chat as well. She will go through the application with you and help you to create the strongest application that you can. Our goal is to fund as many artists as possible. So it's important to us to help you put together a great application and to understand what the requirements are and to know how to access the resources that we have available. So please don't hesitate if you have questions as you're working on your application, particularly for a program that could be as pivotal, as impactful as Ambassador Access. Don't guess, reach out and get some guidance from us on what we're looking for so that you know that you can put your best foot forward in that application. Okay, with that, I am going to turn over for questions completely. So I don't see anything in the Q&A right now, but please feel free to drop things in the Q&A or in the chat. Questions either about ambassador access or about our grants and programs broadly. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. Folks may be typing, so I'm going to talk slowly and make sure everybody has a chance to get a question in if they have one. But again, not to be a broken record, key stuff, super important stuff. Make sure that you're checking out our emails. Again, by virtue of signing up for this webinar, we're going to make sure you're receiving those emails every month. So you will get those from us. Make sure you check them out. They'll have all of our currently available opportunities. In addition to the things that I've mentioned that we know are happening, you never know when something may pop up through a partner or an opportunity presents itself. So those emails are always worth reading top to bottom, just to be sure that you're aware of everything that is available. And follow us on social media, same thing. You'll be able to see all the opportunities that are popping up there. And if you have questions about the application process, about submittable, about how to put together a strong application, Morgan is definitely the person that you want to reach out to. All right, so I see several questions, super exciting. Okay, so if you've toured in other groups, but never as a solo artist, are you eligible for ambassador access? Yes, you definitely would be. So if you have, I'm assuming that what that means is you're a musician performing in someone else's band. And so my assumption would be there that you did not book that tour, you didn't manage that tour, you were along for the ride on that tour and worked and performed, but you didn't handle the business side of that, and you would be touring. In this case, you would be looking to build your career as a solo artist for your own music. Then absolutely yes, you would still be eligible for ambassador access. Okay, next question. I'm curious about some of the showcases you mentioned earlier. What are the Folk Alliance and Americana music festivals like? How are the showcases structured? Never been to one of those. Awesome question. So Folk Alliance is coming up here in a couple of weeks. This year it's in Montreal. Beginning next year, it will move around to different cities. In the past, it's been anchored in Kansas City, but it will be moving around to some different cities. But it always happens kind of late January, early February. And Folk Alliance is a conference and festival that is dedicated to the folk music tradition. You may hear those words and think, well, that is definitely not me, but I promise you that they are looking to have a wider umbrella of what folk music means every year, wider and wider, and bring in more and more different types of artists to represent the different ways that we can understand what folk music is and can be. That conference includes, of course, educational and professional development programming during the day. It includes official showcases that are juried at night, followed by what they call private showcases, which go on into the wee hours. Music Export Memphis typically produces both an official showcase and a private showcase. And because we are in Montreal this year, our presence is much smaller. We are supporting 3 artists in going, but in the past, that number has been around 11 or 12. And once the conference is back stateside, that will look that way as well. And the application for that typically opens in October to go to Folk Alliance as a private showcasing artist. That is a really great one to try to go to if you're looking to book touring opportunities and things like house concerts, festivals. Lots of folks who are talent buyers for those types of opportunities attend Folk Alliance and are really looking to do business. Americana Fest is more festival forward. I would say Folk Alliance is more conference forward. Americana Fest is more festival forward. So lots of live music. It happens in Nashville every September. Lots of parties, and ours has been going on since 2016 and is really well known and well attended, We produce that showcase on the Thursday afternoon of Americana Fest every year. There's also daytime conference programming for professional development, learning, networking, and lots of other showcases, both sort of official and unofficial, that happen throughout the city. It's big and unruly, and it's Nashville, so it can be a little bit harder to, kind of break in and meet people and make relationships. But a really well attended event in terms of music industry and international attendees as well, and folks that maybe would be interested in doing business. There again, you have an organization that is growing the umbrella of what it means to be Americana. So anything that is, roots music related or adjacent, they sort of welcome into the fray. If you think that your music might be a fit for that, definitely worth checking out. Again, that one will open up in June. Okay. Aside from ambassador access, are there any resources on how to set up your first tour, roadblocks and FAQs, et cetera? So what I would say is look out for programming from us through Export 101. So Export 101 is Music Export Memphis's professional development education arm. We produce a podcast that's distributed audio and video, where we sit down with artists and talk about things like setting up your first tour, pretty in depth. So it's worth looking for that we have a landing page that includes a lot of information about it, but you can find it on Spotify and most of their platforms where you receive podcasts. You can also watch the videos of all of those interviews on YouTube, and we'll have a new season of that coming out in 2025. And it really is very directed to artists, and we sort of get into the nitty gritty of how folks have booked and planned tours and done that successfully, really primarily from a DIY perspective. So that one's really helpful. We also produce a quarterly workshop series through Export 101, and you can look out for information on that coming soon as well in that artist email. So the first topic that we'll be covering in the first quarter is going to be finance related, likely focusing in on taxes. So that's not necessarily going to be helpful in planning that first tour, but other topics that we'll cover throughout the year will absolutely dive into that. And so it's worth looking at that schedule when it comes out. Those workshops will happen in March, June, September, and November. And we'll release dates for those and topics probably by the end of the first quarter as we promote that finance workshop that'll happen in March. For ambassador access, if an artist has opened for other artists yet not gone on an independently funded tour, would they not qualify? I would lean to saying that the answer would be the same as the earlier question. So if you did not have anything to do with like booking, planning, promoting that tour yourself, I would say you would still be eligible, because what we're looking for is artists who have not, taken that leap into doing any of the work of being a touring artist, the behind the scenes work. You've done the work in terms of getting out and performing and being on stage in different cities. So I would say, without knowing a lot more detail, I would say it's still worth submitting for it, because I certainly, seeing that description would not count you out from an eligibility standpoint. So hopefully that's a helpful answer. I would not count you out, as I would say that you would be ineligible. Are there any age requirements of bands or sidemen musicians for grants for tours? Absolutely not. So if you meet the requirements for an ambassador grant, a tour grant, that is, if you have this, minimum number of dates, you can qualify. There is no age requirement there on the top end. The only thing I will say is that we cannot work with any artists under the age of 18. We don't work with children. We don't have a child protection policy. So we only work with professionals, so over 18. But in terms of as you move on in your career, we're absolutely still here to fund you. All right. If two or more bands plan to tour together, should they submit tour grants separately? It seems like it might get a little confusing when multiple bands share one or more members. We've definitely encountered this. So Again, it goes back to who are the build artists on the tour. So if you have planned this tour together, but you are both build, so band A and band B, and when we look at the poster, it's band A, band B are both build. You're playing separate sets. Yes, you may share some members, and we may have some follow-up questions when we see both of the applications to just understand exactly how many people total are we talking about, and that can help us on our end to do some of that math. But if you're both billed on the tour, we would want you to submit separately because, A, you can maximize the amount of funding that you can receive, and that's important to us. But also, then we would have different requirements of you. So, again, when you get that artist agreement, it's going to outline what we'd like to see happen from a social media perspective during your tour. And we would want to see both band, like Instagram accounts posting and using the hashtags that we're asking you to use and, writing about how it feels to represent Memphis on the road, all of that stuff. So yeah, you can and should definitely submit two applications. What I would say is if you submitted one application for two bands, that would be more confusing for us. So do submit for each band that is billed. If you're planning that tour together, still plan to submit two separate applications. All right. Well, we are coming to the end of our time. I really want to thank everyone for the great questions. And I hope that we will be seeing lots of you submitting for grants for Music Export Memphis in the coming year. Again, just to let you know, the recording of this will be made available on our YouTube channel so that you'll be able to share it with friends who maybe couldn't join or rewatch, revisit certain questions. Certain elements of walking through the applications, any of that, you'll be able to check this back out. We'll be adding you to our email list. You'll get all that information. And please don't hesitate to reach out to Morgan if you need support as you work through an application, any application, but particularly Ambassador Access, which opens on Wednesday, January 15th. So with that, I will close this out and just want to say thank you all so much for joining, and we look forward to supporting you in the year ahead. Thanks, y'all.